Happy Tuesday, guys. Today I want to talk about contracts. So this week, I'm going to cover business development all this week. And I think the number one thing you need to think about when you're getting into business with anybody is the agreement that you're working under. So all of us work under agreements in everything we do, whether we realize it or not. Even when you go, and this is one thing that I point out earlier, and it's a lot of things that people don't realize, especially when it comes to equal exchange of energies. When you go to the voting booth and you go vote for somebody, you're actually engaging in a contract. You're saying, you know, you're holding them accountable for this, this, and this. But in actuality, if you're voting for somebody, ask yourself what you can actually hold them accountable for. In our present system, there really isn't any accountability for any of those positions. So they're basically just pulling power from you without ever needing to be accountable for anything that you're there's no equal exchange of energy there. So one of the main reasons why I'm starting this project is to create equal exchanges of energy between people. So how do you do that, right? We could talk about marriage. Let's say if I get married to somebody, we are basically making an agreement on three main things, right? We have equal incentive to provide for each other. We have equal accountability because we're accountable to each other. If we're not, one of us isn't picking up our end of the deal, or we're not, being emotionally supportive in the way, then I should expect my spouse to tell me about it, right? And we also want to make sure that we're making decisions together, because if one person's making decisions without communing with the other person, then it's an unhappy relationship, right? So that goes with every relationship out there. There isn't a relationship that doesn't involve those three things. So when you think about your business relationships, the first thing you want to think about are those three things. It's like, okay, what's the incentive? What's the accountability look like? And how are we going to make decisions together? And right now, our business community is so fractionalized that there really isn't a lot of accountability. There's people selling a product, but they're not really accountable to whether or not, they don't have to be accountable for whether or not that product does what they say it's going to do, because they're just charging you a fee, right? We have limited liability contracts. Limited liability contracts are pretty much the opposite of accountability. And so there's so many employees out there that work inside of companies, and everybody is trying to limit their liability. So it's in everybody's best interest to do as little work as possible if you're working for a business, because that company is trying to limit its liability. So if something happens, if you do something wrong, they want to make sure that you are putting blame so that the company's not at fault. So everybody is trying to limit liability, which is actually the worst way to do business, right? I want to make sure to guarantee you that I'm accountable if I mess up. And the same way, you want to look at actions and not look at actions and look at intent. That's a main problem with accountability and that's the reason why we have limited liability, is because everyone is focusing on actions instead of intent. So, we want to hold each other accountable for our intent, not our actions, because we all screw up. We all do stupid stuff. I'll be the first one to say that I've done, yeah. So I'm sure you can, think about your past and, things that you've done that wasn't really accurately representing your intent for something. So always think about your intent, and always make your intent known to the people around you too. Hey, I love you, I care about you, this is my intent. So no matter what I say or do, sorry, I make mistakes, and that's just the way it is. But getting back to contracts are that. So if, let's say, and this has happened to me on LinkedIn a lot, and I'm sure it's happened to all of you if you're on LinkedIn, you have people approach you, let's say, hey, I want to develop a web page for you, or I want to get leads for you. Well, there are some good models out there that are, pay per lead models, where, we pay for every lead you give us, and that sets some kind of accountability. and sets an equal, exchange of energy that's agreed upon. That's actually a pretty good agreement. But when you're just paying someone a blank slate just to do something, and then there's really no, and then they walk away, there's really no good business relationship because there's no mutual incentive. So the best business relationships are mutually incentive, mutual accountability, and we're both making decisions together. And so I built a contract to build a growing organism where everyone has equal incentive and everyone has equal accountability according to their intent. And they all have to make decisions according to what parts are impacting what other parts. So it's a decentralized, self-managing system. There isn't anything out there like that, right? And that's why our larger companies are getting so destructive, because they're always controlled from the inside out. And so you have this competing architecture where people are just trying to get more money and run up the corporate ladder, and it gets disjointed. People don't talk to each other, so all that communication breaks down and it gets super dysfunctional, and people want to leave that system. So now we have a system that is so fractionalized because everyone wants to work for themselves, and nobody has good contracts to create that equal incentive, equal accountability, and decision-making process that everyone is yearning for. That's what everybody wants, right? All of us want good relationships in our day-to-day lives and in our businesses. So I'd like you guys to think about that. Really think about what is causing what we're going through right now. There are more and more people leaving large enterprises and getting into smaller groups because it's easy to work in a 5 or 10 person team. But once you get, over 100 people or so, then it starts to get dysfunctional. What if you could grow it exponentially where it never got dysfunctional? Then you would start drawing employees off of all the dysfunctional organisms and really starting to make a difference. That's what it takes to actually make a difference around here, right? Is you have to become a large group consciousness that is working together to make decisions that are impacting the whole. And until we get to that point, until we start working together in a healthy way, everything that you see here isn't going to change, right? So I want you guys to think about that. Have a happy Tuesday, and I'll see you tomorrow.